So this project is actually a project to solve a personal problem of mine. So I have been looking for a Pomodoro timer with multiple needs. So I'll just go over what I currently try and use. So when I look at a Pomodoro timer, I'm looking for something that will count down the time for the time that I'm trying to get a task accomplished. And ideally, I will use it for productivity where, let's say, for if I'm doing some work, I can set a timer of 15 minutes, 30 minutes, or an hour. And then during that time, I will only focus on that work. And once that time is over, then I can look at other things. So in that, during that time, I will not get deviated or work on anything else. So for that reason, I tried a bunch of different timers. So if you just go on Google and search for, let's say, timer counters, we get a bunch of these things. So we have all these free resources available. However, the problem is they're full of ads and they're not a very nice experience. All of these are just horrible to use and they lack a lot of features, things like being able to use offline and such. Next, we will take a look at some locally available tools. So we also have like Windows has its own timer that we can use. So inside the clock app, we have timers, and essentially you can create as many timers over here as you want. And this is slightly more usable in that uh, you can have multiple timers, and you can also have set different times for them and give them some names. So essentially, I can have something where, let's say, in this particular one, I can call it work. This one I can call something like social media and such. And then I can set the time and then I have them run. So this particular implementation is far superior as compared to anything available on the web. I have also experimented with using something like the timer that is provided by Google search itself. So if we search for timer, we also have this where we can set something like, let's say, 5 seconds. One thing that I'll point out over here is, as you note, once this ends, essentially it starts an alarm. And let's say I'm working on something else, I will have to go back in there and then I will have to press a button to stop it from keeping on playing. And this I find an annoyance, as usually if I'm working on a productivity item, I would want the timer just to give off a pleasant chime and then turn off, and then I can stop doing the work that I was doing at my own pace instead of having to go in and get interrupted and stop the timer from keeping on playing. So this brings me to the application that I've built. So I'm calling it timer counter, and I'll just go over the features that it currently has. So the first thing is it's an installable PWA. PWA stands for a progressive web app, and I'll show you what that looks like. So essentially, this is the URL that it's hosted at. So once I open this, it opens an internet computer hosted front end, and we see that we are greeted with a screen which says new timer. So if I click on this, it will create a brand new timer with a timer area, some buttons that we can use to select how much time we want to run this for. Essentially, we can click play and this keeps going, or we can hit pause and again click play to resume, or hit reset to 0 seconds. The reason for having only these 3 times is ideally these are the most used ones, and it doesn't make sense in this case to have more options. The other thing to note is you see a counter in over here. So what we can do is we can increment this or decrement this manually, as well as when a timer is completed, this counter will automatically increase by a. One more thing that I'll point out, which will not be able to demonstrate in this case, is once this timer finishes counting down, at the very end, it provides a very pleasant chime instead of a constant alarm that you need to manually go and suppress. In this case, it will just chime for half a second or so, and then you know that the time is over, and then you can stop at your own pace. The next thing that I'll point out is you can also edit these labels. So essentially you can say something like, let's say this is for play. You can create another one called work, maybe another one called social. And then these labels are saved. So since this is an installable PWA, we notice that there's a install button over there. So if I click on this install button, it prompts me to install this app. I'll go ahead and install. And what we notice is we are brought out of our app and put in a separate app. So essentially I can show you this is a separate app as compared to the Chrome window that we have over here. This is also searchable and essentially becomes a native app on your system. So if I go to my Windows search and search for timer counter, this is the app that comes up. So now that I have it open again, you'll also notice that it retains the state. So essentially, if I have made changes, or essentially if I have pending timers that have already run and there's some existing history, all of that is preserved across refreshes or across app opens. So I'll again open this and we notice all this state is saved. The next feature that I want to highlight is, so we've covered the PW installability, we've covered timer functions, we've covered counter functions. I've spoken about the chime, but you can test it out on your own. Ideally, it will take 15 minutes for the chime to sound. So in this case, we are skipping that. The UI has been built using some CSS framework called Tailwind CSS, and it is a pretty modern looking UI as compared to some of the other examples that we saw. It is fairly responsive, so essentially you can use it on a tablet, you can use it on a mobile device. I'll also demonstrate that on a separate mobile device, or you could use it on a full-size desktop. Another big feature which is missing from most web-based timer apps that I've used is the ability to work offline. So in this case, what I'll do is I'll go ahead and enable airplane mode. So I should be able to enable from here. If I turn on aeroplane mode, right now if I go and try to visit any other website, let's say if I go to google.com, it says the site can be reached. So now if I close the app and open it again, it loads fine and you can run as many timers as you want. It works absolutely fine. This is enabled by the use of service workers, and ideally it was a challenge using service workers on IC hosted web apps, simply because on the normal URL, the .ic0.app URLs, service worker functionality is actually hijacked by boundary nodes to inject their own service worker. So in this case, we are having to use the raw.ic0.app URLs. The next feature that I want to highlight is, I'll just go ahead and enable my network connection, and so the next thing that I want to cover is being able to sync this data across devices. So when I am using a counter app, ideally if I am on a mobile device, I should still be able to resume over there. So for that, the first thing is, right now you'll notice we were able to use this without having to log in, and this works this way so that you are not forced into signing into an account before you can use it. You can ideally use it like that and it will work just fine. However, if you want to take this state on a different device, you'll notice there's an arrow over here. So if we click the sync button, it will ask me to log in. I am going to use an internet identity to log in. So once I'm logged in, you'll notice this has turned green. And essentially what this has done is, this is saving this particular app state to the internet computer based on who is logged in. So next what I'll do is, I'll share my mobile phone screen and cast it to this device. That way we can see the experience once we log in from our mobile phone using the same internet identity. So I'm just going to start casting. So once the casting starts, I'll hit allow over here. We can see that I'm on my mobile device. So over here, what I'll do is I'll get rid of this and I'll open the timer counter. So once I open timer counter, I am greeted by a screen where it's already logged in. So let me just quickly log out of this. Alright, so now that I've cleared the logged in data from my timer counter, now I can try to open it again. So if I open it now, I see that I only get prompted with a new timer. So first thing that I'll try doing is I'll actually create some local state over here. So maybe I'll give it a name of, let's say, we will give it a name of, let's say, mobile games. And as we remember, we did not have any mobile games on the other device. So now, as we see, it also prompts a add timer counter to home screen at the very bottom. If I click on this, it will ask me to install the app. I'll install the app, and what we'll notice is it installs an app that is as seamless and as intuitive as any native app. So now once it says it has added it to the home screen, I'll go ahead and close this and go to my home screen. And on my home screen, I see a timer counter. So if I tap on this, it brings up a native app experience with all the data that we currently input into the web app. So now from over here, what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to sign in with my internet identity. I'll use this session. It's asking me to verify my identity. Once I go ahead and do that, so what we noticed is it updated everything. So over here we have a play, we have a work, we have social media, and then we also have the one that we created locally on this device, which is mobile games. So it was cognizant of my earlier state and merged the two activities so that we have a seamless experience across devices. And now that I am done making these changes, so what I can do is if I close out my mobile app, so now that I've closed out my mobile app, I will resume on my desktop again by opening the app. So now that I open the app, I notice that it automatically synced mobile games to this device, and now I have all my counters in a single place, synced across devices and working just exactly how I want them. This is all the features that have been implemented in this timer counter. Thank you for watching this video.